So today we're going to talk about simple objects in color. We normally do jelly beans as our simple object, but you could use any other kind of spherical simple object that you wanted to. The essential question for this unit is what makes creating value in color more complicated than value in black and white, specifically for unifying a piece. Again, you can use the Cornell notes that are linked in the bottom right of this presentation to take some notes for yourself so that you don't have to have the presentation open the whole time. You could also use any notes that you take on any quizzes that we might have. The learning targets for this unit are: I understand color theory and utilize color vocabulary appropriately when referring to any part of what I'm working on in my sketchbook or larger drawing. I can create a jelly bean or simple object in color utilizing the colored pencils to create unified color value. As before, the design process of think, make, and improve will be utilized in this unit. Right now we're thinking about things and learning some terminology and learning the steps of how to create a simple object in value, specifically jelly beans. And we are going to be making those in our sketchbooks shortly. During the process, we will be doing both in process and critiques at the end. The end critique will be what you're reflecting in your digital portfolio. As we talk about the digital portfolio, you need to remember that you need to take process photos as we are going along. This time you will not need a resource artist because we're just practicing a skill in our sketchbook. Remember, you also need to reflect on the design process standards and you should be highlighting the terminology. Right here I've put arrows to where the person was trying to make their terminology bold, but it was still really hard to see because of the font that was selected. So it's a good idea to highlight the terms that you're using in your reflections as well. Spherical color requirements are as follows. The first requirement is that you have to create color value on a spherical object. And the reason that we're doing this is there are going to be spherical objects in the still life and you need to practice doing those. We actually do that in a jelly bean drawing to both unify what we're doing and capture the shadows so that we practice color value and unification. That actually brings us to number 2. We're talking about, again, unified value. The reason we're talking about unified value is that you're not just working with black, white, and gray at this point. We're also using color, which means all of the colors should be used throughout the drawing that you're doing in different portions of it. So each one of the beans should have a little bit of the other colors of the other jelly beans within them. That also goes for the shadow colors. The shadow colors should be used throughout different portions of the drawing as well. The third requirement is that you are filling your sketchbook page with these objects, with whatever spherical object you're using. Again, the jelly beans should be about the size of your fist as you are doing this. And just so that you are aware, the cool jelly beans are a little bit harder to do. Again, since we are trying to get this done in about 3 class periods, you really should stay away from stippling as you're creating your value as well. When we talk about the colored pencil set, there are 24 colors in the colored pencil kit that we have purchased for you. What you should notice is that all of the cool colors will be in one part of the tin and all of the warm colors will be in another part of the tin. Normally the way that they are arranged is there is a colorless blender that'll be on the left-hand side over here. Then it'll start from white and all of the warm colors, and then I normally put Tuscan red and indigo blue on that top portion with the warm colors, because then anybody that's doing the warm colors, all of the colored pencils are right in the same area. You should really be putting the colored pencil kit back in the same order. So what you can do is take one from a previous unit or one that someone else has put back already, and you can put your pencils back in the same order. We're asking you to do that because it's the respectful thing to do to the person that's going to be using that same tin in the next semester. We talked a little bit about warm and cool jelly beans. There are actually videos that go through how to draw that. You can click on the blue links here to actually go to those videos. There will be a discussion prompt as well for you to make comments on in order to get credit for watching those. Again, part of the reason we make you watch the videos is so that you're actually following along with the steps, and it actually makes your drawing stronger if you're watching the video and drawing at the same time. The first thing that we're going to do is go over the directions for the warm jelly beans. So again, as you are looking at your jelly beans on your table, I would suggest putting a piece of paper underneath them so that you really see where the shadows are. You can take a photograph with your phone if you would like to do so. There is also a Google Drive folder that you can access pictures of warm jelly beans if you need to. It is in this presentation as well as in the Canvas module. So the first step would be to block in the shapes that you're seeing on the paper. The next thing I would suggest to do is taking out the color of the jelly bean photo that you have so that you're seeing the objects in black and white. That way you can see where each of the outlines are, as well as any reflections that might be on there. So you can actually see the reflections of the lights in the jelly beans on the top, and then you can see the shadows underneath. This particular person had 2 light sources, which is why you're seeing so many different shadows on the bottom. But you can actually take the color out in order to see where the different values are on the beans as you're drawing them. The next thing that you want to think about is using the lightest color first, and you're going to fill in parts of the jelly beans with the lightest color first. So in this particular drawing, it would be yellow. The yellow bean is the lightest, so you're going to color all the different lightest parts of the beans with yellow. So if I go back to this black and white image, you can see there's lighter parts of different parts of each of those beans. Those are what should be the yellow in that drawing. It's not exactly the same photograph as here. Realistically, we were using the photograph from slide 10. One other thing that you want to be aware of is as you are creating the application of value, so the very first time you even put the yellow down, you want to be going in a circular motion so that the colors actually blend nicely together. Here you can see the person is using the second darkest color. So in this case, because they're doing the warm beans, that color is orange. They're again going in circular motions, and you can actually see how the beans are starting to look a little bit more rounded because of where the person put the orange in these jelly beans. Another thing you want to remember as you are adding the colors is you want to go in a meandering or curving direction because it will help show the form of the jelly beans. You want to think of it like a river or a lake bed, how it's never exactly a straight line. It's always a curvilinear line that you're using to create the value. As you continue to do that, the darkest color would be added then last. And what I want you to also notice is that the darker color was used in between these 2 beans. So the darker color is on the bottom of the bean in the back, and it's also at the bottom of the bean that's in the front. So it's really important to have the lightest color meet where the 2 beans actually meet. And you do want to have 2 beans touch each other like that, so that you have to think about how to make the one object look like it's in front of the other using the lighter color to make it come forward. The reason that you need to practice this now is it's going to happen in the still life, and you won't be able to do it if you don't practice it on the jelly bean drawing. Another thing you want to take a look at when you are creating your spherical or jelly bean examples is you want to take a look at the color wheel in order to remember which colors are lighter than others. So for example, you can see that yellow is the lightest color and it's at the top of the color wheel. And as you move progressively down, there are some colors that are similar in value. It's important to understand that as you're creating these different practice drawings, because that will happen in the still life as well. Even if you use a different color scheme, you still have to think about which colors are lighter than others in order to make different objects come forward or move back in a composition as you are creating value in color. So another thing that you want to think about is creating the shadows. So Tuscan red and indigo blue are the darkest of the colored pencils, and they are what you should be using to create the shadows for the jelly beans. When you combine those two colors, they actually look like black. So up here on this upper right image, underneath that jelly bean that's all the way on the right, that is not black that was used. That is actually a combination of Tuscan red and indigo blue, and you can see how very dark it gets. Again, the reason we're practicing these things are so that you see the way that colors react to each other. The umbra, which is the darkest part of the shadow, you're going to actually combine the Tuscan red and indigo blue. Here you can see the person is doing that. It's also recommended that you have a really sharp pencil in order to get really nice crisp edges. So any of these edges that you're seeing from one bean to another, or from the bean to the background, or from the bean to the shadow, those were created with really sharp pencils, and the person, generally speaking, presses pretty hard as you're doing the edges, and then you have to pick up the pressure of the pencil so that you get those lighter values within the shadow and within the object itself. Here again, you can see them getting the penumbra, which is that second darkest shadow. So again, the umbra is this darker part of the shadow, and the penumbra is the second darkest part of the shadow that you're seeing. You might have to go back and erase certain things. So if you see here, the person was erasing part of the penumbra where they actually put a little bit too much of the colored pencil value on. One thing you do have to be careful with the colored pencils is once you add the colored pencil, it's sometimes very hard to get the colored pencil to come back off. Sometimes we actually use an X-Acto knife to scrape parts of the color away for that reason. However, you might want the teacher to demonstrate how to do that. I'm going to explain right now that you take the X-Acto knife and you have to hold it very parallel to your paper in order to scrape the color off without cutting the paper. If that doesn't make sense to you, please see your instructor so that they can show you what they mean in order to use this technique if you've accidentally put too much color in an area and it will not erase. All right, so we're going to do this again, but this time we're going to use the cool colored jelly beans. So if you look at the photo, you can actually see here the person was blocking in just the outlines of their beans, and actually this particular example already has some of the pink in some of it, but hopefully you can see some of the outlines over here. They're really hard to see because this person drew very, very lightly, which was an excellent idea. So after you get your outlines done, you're going to actually use the lightest of the colors. This person did pick pink. Technically, this pink and the green are almost the same value because, again, if you look at that color wheel that we had looked at before, green is a little bit higher than red on the color wheel, so technically green would be the lightest color. This particular person started with pink. It is fine that they did that. It will actually work out, and we'll show you that in a little bit here. But if you wanted to, you could potentially use the green as the lighter color. The reason green is lighter is it has some yellow in it, and so therefore it's going to actually go higher on the color wheel than what the red is going to do. You notice that red was kind of low on the color wheel. It's darker. So again, they're using that first color and they're filling in the beans. After they've done that, they used the second darkest color. This particular example, they are saying that that's the green. So as you are going, you want to make sure that you're going in circular motions like before, and again, that meandering line. So if we're looking at these jelly beans, notice how the green that's been added is meandering. It's not in a straight line. It's very curvilinear in order to show the form of the jelly bean. You will have to go back and forth in order to unify the beans. So if you actually are looking at this, the image on the right is showing the person adding a little bit more of the pink over the top of where they had added that violet. Because again, the colors in this particular set of jelly beans were pink, green, and violet. So as they're doing that, you need to use each color in each bean, and it does kind of make them look a little bit rainbow colored or maybe like Easter eggs. Okay, that's okay. Really, the idea is to unify the colors throughout this jelly bean drawing so that you're using color in value and you're understanding how to unify a drawing at the same time. As we continue to go through here, again, you're going to notice that the darker colors are toward the bottom of the jelly bean and the lighter colors are toward the top. The reason for that is the lights in the classroom are up above you and they are creating a highlight on the jelly bean, and it gets darker as it goes toward the bottom of the bean. And then of course the shadows are even darker than that. You will have to use layers of color in order to continue to make these beans look rounded. So if we go back just from the beginning here, you notice they used one color, they added the second color, then they're starting to add a little bit of the darkest color in these beans, then they go back and they're actually adding the pink back over the top in order to get the pink bean to look actually pink. Then they're adding more green onto the green jelly bean. That's what they were doing here, is adding more green, and you can see it got more green. Then they're adding more purple to the purple jelly bean in order to make the beans actually look pink, green, and purple. Again, you will have to unify the colors by using them throughout each in order to make the entire drawing unified. You will probably have to go back and erase certain areas that you may have made mistakes on before. Again, we are using Tuscan red and indigo blue as the colors for the shadows in order to push those shadows way underneath the beans. You will have to push harder with the colored pencils in order to make those shadows dark enough to really go underneath the beans. It's really important where you are closest to the bean to use a super sharp pencil so that this edge of the bean is exactly precise. It's a very crisp edge from the bean to the shadow, and then again from the bean to the background you want to do the same thing on the top edge of the jelly bean. You have to be very careful making that really nice and crisp so that it looks focused. Again, we are using value in light layers as we go through this. It will take you several days to create the unified color of the jelly beans in your sketchbook. As a reminder, you do need to take process photos as you're going along, so it's a good idea to take the image just blocked in and then with a little bit of the value, and then as the jelly beans are finished for your process photos for your digital portfolio. Here are those jelly bean videos for you, the warm jelly bean videos on the top, the cool jelly bean videos in the middle. In the module in Canvas, it will be a discussion that you'll get credit for. So really we want you to watch that video one time through, answer the questions, and then you can always replay the video in order to watch it step by step as you're drawing. It's a really good idea to do that because it'll actually give you some tips as you're trying to put the colored pencil value on your drawing in your sketchbook.